So let's take a look at Microsoft Whiteboard. Now, if you are using Hub platform in Wales, this is going to be something that you can utilize really easily with your students. Now, I'm just going to show you Whiteboard in general, just the settings, things that you can do within it. But we'll finish with looking at how you can then share that as a link. And so if you're using Teams as your platform or Office, OneNote, any of those things, you can just share this and your students will have access to the same board as you. So let's jump into Whiteboard. It's this app here on your device. And you'll see I've already got a couple started here. But I'm going to start a new whiteboard. And some common things that you'll see along the left-hand side here, we have a choice of pens. Now, if you're used to using Office 365, Word and PowerPoint, you'll notice that within each of these, you can basically set a small kind of range of pens that you want. So if I want to have some that are slightly thicker, but change the colors, etc., I've got that set along the side. Equally, I've got my highlighter. Again, I can make that bigger, change the opacity, etc., change the colors. The rubber, that you'll be, it's a rubber. A ruler, which again, really nice. Touchscreen device gives you that ability to just use two fingers on the screen. I'm just tapping this with two fingers and being able to move that around. And then obviously tap on the pens themselves, and then that's going to let you just draw a straight line. So if I just tap any of those pens and then draw along the line, you'll see it's going to just leave that nice straight line on the page for me. Tap again to remove the ruler. Next one is a lasso tool, so it's just going to select that object, and then I can move that object around on the page to wherever I might need it. So quite useful, if you've drawn something nice and big and you want to just kind of move that away to the side. So it's still relevant there for the students to be able to see, but you don't need it kind of front and center on the page. Again, tap the lasso and it will leave that where it is. The next one then is text input. So if I just want to have text on the screen, I can just type onto the screen and have in some text. Now, the other thing to notice here is I'm using an Apple Pencil with this. So if I just add that text in, again, there's the text on the page. If I do that again, you'll notice that on the screen I have this icon here. This is the scribble feature. And this now means that this whole page is handwriting recognition enabled. So if I type right on the screen, there we go. I was writing in the wrong place, sorry. It's going to show up so that that text then gets turned into, or the handwriting, sorry, gets turned into text. Again, tapping on done adds that to the screen. I can then move around by selecting it and adding it to wherever I need to. So again, just really just simple things, what you can do with this. Not going to go too much into like how you would use this in the classroom. All teachers can come up with those fantastic ideas for themselves. The next one then to just show you is this icon here. This is a really nice way of just separating the board down for students. Now again, you'll notice I get the scribble pen. So again, these can all be written on if I want to. And that's going to turn it into text on the screen. But what this also leads to is the ability to kind of set up specific spaces for your students. Now, there is a way of doing this a little bit easier, but I would suggest this is a great way to have multiple places for students to be able to give feedback, similar to the dry whiteboards that you might use in the classroom to get instant feedback from students. This can work in a very similar way, certainly if you're doing this in a remote environment. So again, tap on the Post-it note. Choose what you want to type into here. Again, you can type if you haven't got the Apple Pencil or you're using a stylus or just your finger. But equally, for students that are using just their finger on it, it's just as good to be able to just have the pencil or your finger to be able to add that to the screen. Next one along then is pictures. What's nice here is it's either a library image, something you've got stored, or equally you can just open a camera and take a photo of something. I was going to add that to the board. Again, nice if you want to bring kind of real world learning into something, because once that picture is on there, I can then draw over it. It could be something where I'm measuring angles of something. So the angle of the window, whatever it might be, the angle of different things. You've got that as a built-in tool. Again, great for modeling for students, but equally good, set this up for students to be able to work on it for themselves and present information back to you. Again, just turn the ruler off by tapping on the ruler. Next one then is where it gets a little bit more interesting because it's down to the design element. The plus here gives you some additional things to add in. This one I think is really, really useful for working with classes because it's going to give me this note grid view. And this is what I was mentioning before about that ability for students to have their own space. Now it starts off with just 4 spaces. I can just completely edit this by adding in lots of new notes if I want to. You just keep tapping away. So again, this is something you might want to get set up in advance. But then each student has their own note. So we'll look at this in a second in terms of collaboration. But each student could then have a note on their page. They could write their name, they could write their answer, their thoughts, whatever it might be. And all students would be able to see this on the grid. Some different options across the top, obviously to be able to write. You can have this just as a voting grid, so different ideas come into this, and different people can then tap on different areas and vote. That's an idea we like. So again, that collaborative kind of approach to things. You could change the color of those so it makes it easier for people to know, whose grid is whose, personalizing those things. And then obviously deleting those things out afterwards if you don't want to have them. Okay, next one then, just undo and redo if a mistake is made. Now it's useful at this point to point out this is just a shared grid. If someone deletes something, it's going to be deleted for everybody. So you might want to put into place some rules around how you use this. Maybe it's not something which is like formal assessment, just a place for people to share ideas. But again, that comes down to your structure in your classroom and obviously it depends on the age of the students you're working in. So they're your tools. Over on the right hand side over here then, this one here, this is what we were talking about at the very start. If I tap on this, it's going to give me this option to have a sharing link once this is loaded through. It just gives me the option to turn this web sharing link on. Once that's turned on, it's going to generate a link that I can then copy. And like I said, if I'm using something like Teams, I just copy that link, paste it in there, and it's going to give students access to this whiteboard. And in the 3 bars here, the more section, lots more things that you can do. Now I'm on an iPad, so obviously I have specific things, ink to shape, ink to table. I'll show you those in a second, snapping things in. But the one thing that's really, really nice from a teacher point of view is this option to format the background. Now at the moment you'll see that my background is lots of dots. If I go to format background, you have some options here to change what it looks like, changing the color. Could be something which can help with students in terms of accessibility, but then also these nice grid backgrounds that you can change, very much based around doing things within maths, I suppose, the first lot, moving on to things that could be very, very useful for art teachers, looking at symmetry and design and pattern, to some which are more kind of around writing and having that scaffolded ability to write on the screen. That's just going to change that background on the screen. And then when I come back into it again, because I can zoom into it, it just kind of keeps that pattern on the page that I can utilize. Again, just form structure for those things that you're doing in the classroom. Equally, if I just choose one of the more maths generated ones, the graph paper, again, as I dive in, you'll see that those squares kind of keep getting bigger and bigger as you zoom in. Just it's always there as a pattern in the background, just kind of matches the paper that students might be using in the classroom. Finally then, like I said, we're just going to take a look at this ink to shape, ink to table. If I want to ink to shape, if I'm drawing a square, just tap that. It's going to keep that square on the page. So again, it just helps if you're trying to replicate something on from a teacher point of view, if you're trying to model something, but you're not great at drawing, shapes, etc. It's going to fix those shapes for you. And then one which is a little bit more tricky to get used to is the ink to table. Now, if I draw this in, here's my shape, but I want to create this into a table. You'll see just by drawing lines down it, it's going to separate those pages, and it's going to turn those things into a table that you can utilize. So again, just a really, really nice feature just to speed up how you might organize some of your features on the page. And the final thing to kind of point out is, you can just keep pinching to zoom into things, but if you keep moving the page around, it's really unlimited. So a great way for being able to just model things to your students if you're doing a demonstration asynchronously, if you're using this in the classroom as a whiteboard by connecting your iPad to the front of the class. And again, similar to what I'm doing a screen recording means everything that you've done is captured and easy to share to your students, whether you're working face to face and they just want to recap, or whether you're working at distance and this actually forms part of your lesson. So there we go. Whiteboard, useful tool. use it with your students, and I'm sure people are going to come up with some fantastic ideas of how they've used this.